Hello viewers, this is our next edition of Development Talks, and today we are very fortunate to have Mr. Mark O'Donnell, who is a public finance management expert, and he has actually worked in Bangladesh off and on for 20 years, and we are very curious to hear from him about the evolution and development of public finance management in Bangladesh. Before we enter into the conversation, I would request you, Mark, to introduce yourself.
Uh, Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today, Zahir. My uh, my fondness for Bangladesh goes back 20 years. It's a country I'm very fond of. I often say in my heart I'm Bangladeshi. My family lived here, and with my wife, my children went to school here.
Okay.
And this country will always have a very special place in my heart. And I first came here, well, my own background to begin with, I'm a public financial management accountant. And I've worked around the world. I've worked in Africa, several countries, Asian countries, in Europe, and I've also worked in the UK and Scotland at home before I started working in international development. But the first work I did, the first work that I did overseas was in Bangladesh.
Okay.
Hence, it will always be with me here.
Yeah. So you have some kind of attachment
Absolutely.
to Bangladesh soil. So that's very good to know. So now, as I asked you, as you worked in public finance management in Bangladesh, and you have been here for 20 years off and on. So what you have observed? What is the evolution of public finance management in Bangladesh?
I think it's useful to consider the history of public financial management reform in Bangladesh to give some perspective to this. The starting point for public financial management reform in Bangladesh was the Corbett Committee in 1990. And that was a diagnostic study that was government-led. And the character of public financial management reform in Bangladesh since then has been government-led. Now, the Corbett report is available on Finance Division website, public document, and it considered many aspects of public financial management, administrative structure, skill sets, and it basically set the frame for technical reforms for that generation, roughly 35 years until today. So what happened after Corbett is the first project was a World Bank project, RIBEC, Reforms in Budgeting and Expenditure Control, I think. And there was a group of projects, including an audit project called STAG. And that group of projects, as well as focusing on technical reforms, created a cadre, and I use the word advisedly, a cadre of officials who became the engine room of reform for the next generation.
A cadre of professionals.
Cadre of professionals.
That's very good.
That was utterly integrated themselves and owned the reform process. So the technical reforms have up here always been run by Bangladeshis. Now, that's the best circumstances you can ever have for any series of technical reforms, is that it's run in country, owned in country, managed in country, and most importantly, led in country.
So in that sense, it has full ownership.
Absolutely.
That's very good to know.
And that, that can create tensions with donors and so on. But I think Bangladesh has proved itself to be successful in public financial management reform. Okay, so as these reforms have progressed, from RIBEC to FMRP, which was funded by UK Government Royal Netherlands Embassy. There was a scope project, which was auditing, which was funded by CEDA. And there was a World Bank Multi-Donor Trust Fund project after that, SPEM. And there's a European Union project after that. Now, what it tells you is that many donors have had faith and confidence in Bangladesh to put funds forward and say, we will continue with the frame of reference going back to Corbett and the technical reforms that you want within that period. So there's a lot of confidence in what Bangladesh can achieve, and that's justified. And here's some of the reasons why. That if you look at the quality of macroeconomic forecasting, medium-term macro frameworks, framing everything that Bangladesh has done, that's quite mature in Bangladesh. That's been running 20 years. Okay? Medium-term budgeting frameworks that bring together one of the problems has always been that
That's commonly known as MTBF, right?
MTBF. That's right.
Yes.
The recurring budget would be here, the development budget would be here, they would not be considered. But with MTBF, they're considered together, and they're also considered in light of national policy. So resources are allocated within national policy. So there's still work to do.
So it's very strategic in terms of resource allocation.
It should be, yeah.
Exactly.
That's the objective of it. And it's very mature. If you look at it, the performance aspects are well laid out within.
And crucial for the development projects also. Yeah.
Now, the engine room of these reforms have been a strong group of people who got master's degrees in public financial management, economics, and so on during the Riebeck period. Call them the Riebeck generation, if you will. And that has been an engine room of reform since. But that was 35 years ago, and that very able and energetic group are now beginning to leave public life. So the consideration, I think, for Bangladesh now is what happens to the next generation? How will that next generation be brought forward to drive this next generation of reform? The projects from Riebeck to FMRP to SPEM more or less represent 5 to 7 year chunks along the road. And there's a new reform action plan just been finalised now that's going to take the country to 2030. Okay. And it covers all aspects through from budgeting, macro forecasting, which are strong in Bangladesh now. Accounting, which is improving. The chart of accounts in Bangladesh, for example, in my opinion, is one of the best that there is. There's a strong policy dimension which allows rational resource allocation to policy priorities related to national plans. Financial reporting, the government can produce IPSIS statements. IPSIS is International Public Sector Accounting Standards compliant statements annually now. On a cash basis. So it can produce statements like that. I think there's a couple of areas that should come next in terms of reform. Strengthening and improving reporting is one, and strengthening audit is another. Audit and scrutiny. The audit part of it is both internal audit and internal control. And the Auditor General's office to strengthen the scrutiny aspect. So that would complete the cycle within a generation and a half, say, from strong macro fiscal work, strong budgeting, strengthen accounting and financial reporting, strengthen audit, then you have the
complete the cycle
of public financial management. Now, I think the time now is that Corbett was a generational framing of public financial management reform. And I think now would be a good time to frame the next generation, the next 30 years or so. Now, I think a strong part of Riebeck was the creation of this cadre of officials who were able to drive reform as a group. They hunted as a pack. And they were able to stay together and assure that this would go on. So there was no, even though the project cycle stop, start, this group behaved as a group and were able to drive this forward. A Corbett style diagnostic now about what the professional requirements are for the next generation should be undertaken now.
Okay. Okay.
So in the current 25 to 30 reform plan, the word training appears, I think, 50 times, but the word professional appears 12 times. Now, I think the word professional should be where the emphasis lies. That's people with a vested interest in ensuring that the procurement is done properly, the accounting is done properly, the auditing is done properly, the financial management is done properly. With a professional vested interest in that, it's where that future lies. That's my feeling. But that, I think, would need to be validated by a Corbeck-style diagnostic today. So I would like to see that happen.
Okay.
And look for professionalisation of these aspects of public financial management. And this would mean involving professional institutes internationally and in Bangladesh.
Okay.
Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply are very strong in Bangladesh. They've had programs here for 10 years, and they've got some of the smartest people involved in procurement here.
Yes.
Accounting, they've got ICAB, ICMEB in Bangladesh. They have SIPFA in Bangladesh.
We also have e-procurement now.
Yeah, and e-procurement, the professional aspects of that, the qualitative aspects of that, entirely managed by SIPS professionals. Bangladeshis, not foreigners, Bangladeshis. There's Bangladeshis here in public financial management, the same qualification I have, yet here I am.
Yeah.
So my role could be and will be redundant one day, because there'll be a critical mass of professionals who will drive forward public financial management reform in the same way the Rybeck generation did.
Okay.
But we need to have, I think, the policy that says that. That needs to be rooted more deeply and more fundamentally within the next generation of public financial management.
I'm very glad to hear that, Mark. I think the policymakers here in Bangladesh will take your advice. These are key recommendations and advice relates to reform, relates to, in fact, budget allocation. It's all gamut of very critical, crucial, and strategic issues. Would you or could you touch up a little bit, because you also, as far as I know, worked on asset management in Bangladesh?
Yeah, briefly. Yeah.
Briefly, yes. So that is an area which I also strongly felt like when I go to any organization, if I ask this question, like Water Development Board, LGED, or Dhaka Water Supply and Sewerage Authority, per se or categorically, this asset management or ERP as such does not exist. Any view on that, Mark?
I think the bones of it from a financial management side are stronger now than they were when I looked at this around 10 years ago. And I think one of the keys to that is the government's chart of accounts, the classification. So the classification or the accounting classifications are there now to be able to classify assets. If what I would like to see happen there, Zahir, is that much of the infrastructure, there's a huge difference in infrastructure from 10 years ago in Bangladesh. The city, Dhaka, is unrecognisable. The Padma Bridge is a miracle, an absolute miracle. If 1% of the cost of that concrete was allocated to asset management, it would be better.
Yes.
So I think from a project design and a program design point of view, I would hypothecate 1 to 2% of all of these programs and use it for asset management. And what I mean by asset management in that sense is, control of the portfolio at the basic level, basic control, identification, classification, life cycle maintenance programs.
Life cycle maintenance, yes.
The bones of that life cycle maintenance are already there in Bangladesh. You mentioned it, medium-term budget framework.
True.
So that's in place.
Yes.
So the ability and the administrative or financial management infrastructure is there to do that. I think at least part of the reason but it's not happening is the funds have not been allocated to do so.
And it should also be put into practice. Yeah, that's
some
not
leadership in that.
some leadership.
And
Yeah.
I sometimes joke about this. You're an engineer and I'm an accountant, okay? That asset management has been too much hijacked by accountants and not enough hijacked by engineers.
Yeah.
So I think engineers and accountants need to work together.
True.
You
True.
know,
True.
it's not a competition; it's a collaboration.
Collaboration.
So we should try to work together more closely.
Yeah, that will synergize the whole thing.
Yes, I think so.
Absolutely.
I think so.
So, okay, Mark, I think you have enlightened the audience and the viewers on the public finance management and asset management of Bangladesh, and many of your points are key recommendations, and we believe and I hope that the policymakers will listen to this and they will take your advice and recommendations, and maybe it will generate interest among many professionals, and in future we hope to meet again.
Yeah.
Mark, wish you all the best and good luck and good stay in Bangladesh.
Thank you. So, my pleasure. Always my pleasure to talk about Bangladesh, but also a pleasure and a privilege to contribute something to Bangladesh.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mark.